Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Between Two Chairs. I'm Fernando Arencibia Jr. Thank you so much for joining us. And with me, as always, is Jennifer Woolman. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, Fernando.
Jennifer woke up.
Radio voice.
Yeah, exactly. Jennifer woke up extra early this morning. She was texting, and I don't even know if she went for a run. Did you go for a run this morning? There you go. Is that what it is?
I didn't start the conversation.
That's right.
Early morning text with
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I am. I'm a 5 a.m. club.
Yes, you are. You are. Absolutely. I can attest to that.
Sorry.
Inez is very happy she didn't get a text at 5. She was okay with 7 a.m. So it worked out.
I tried to restrain.
I hear you. Well, today we want to break down the C5 CCIM Global Summit that just took place a couple of weeks ago in right our own backyard here in Hollywood, Florida. This is the fourth iteration of this NAR National Commercial Conference. It's the fourth year in a row, and overall, I think it keeps getting better. There's so much quality that I think we really are able to extract from it. And what we wanted to do today was kind of break down a little bit of, based on some of the notes that we took, and and just give our listeners an overall behind the curtains of that experience, right?
Yes. And it's funny because going through my notes, I wrote a ton of notes on a lot of the presenters and obviously took pictures of the presentations and stuff. And as I was going through it and getting ready for today, one theme was kind of recurring. It didn't matter what they were talking about, whether it was the economy or retail or office or whatever, but things are changing extremely fast at the pace. I mean, there's always change, but the pace of change is happening extremely quickly. Mm-hmm. A lot of it due to technology, but also due just to changing tastes and demographics and everything else. So I thought that was really interesting. It made me exhausted by the time I was done thinking of how fast everything is going and what the client expectations are.
Yeah.
But I thought it was super, super interesting. It was a great conference. The speakers were all top caliber. I got to hear from Paco Underhill that I was shocked because I've read his book called Why We Buy. And I read that book a million years ago when it first came out. It wasn't a million years ago. I exaggerated a tiny bit, but it's been a minute since it came out, and it's all about retail and how people buy, and super interesting book. I think it's still applicable today. But it was wonderful to hear him and his stuff. So we can get into that if we go chronologically. We started off with Tiffany Boba.
Yeah, and I agree. I concur with you. I think the presentations were tremendous. The caliber of the speakers and the keynote speakers, and the way that entire thing was curated, I thought was great. And of course, what we get a lot out of it is there's wonderful networking. Everybody who's there wants to connect. So that energy, I think, has been there from the very beginning. This is a conference that started in New York City 4 years ago. We were just at the height of the pandemic. We were just on the other side of it. We were, still adjusting. I remember having to have my shot card to be able to go into restaurants in New York City when we went up there. So it was not as large as you would expect for a conference of this caliber, but the quality of the presentations was there. And so I think that there has been always a intention to be very high quality in what is being provided to those that attend. I also enjoy that there's been an evolution of the conference over the last 4 years. One really significant factor has been the collaboration with CCIM over the last 2 years. And I'm really happy that it became this NARC5 CCIM Global Summit. And I started last year in Atlanta. Like I said, the first 2 years were in New York City, last year in Atlanta, and now we were able to bring it home here to South Florida, which is wonderful. And next year we'll be in Chicago,
Correct.
which is also a great commercial market. So it's going to be really interesting. And yeah, we started with Tiffany Bova, two-time Wall Street Journal best-selling author. She's a growth strategist. Were there one or two things there that you caught on that you thought was really key?
First of all, her overall presentation was all about CX, right? CX is the new terminology, or I don't know if it's new, but what everyone's using as a shorthand for the customer experience. And it is kind of the buzzword of the moment. Everybody is extremely focused on it. And I really liked Oracle has a definition of what exactly it encompasses. And it says CX refers to how a business engages with its customers at every point of their buying journey, from marketing to sales to customer service and everywhere in between. In large part, it's the sum total of every interaction a customer has with your brand. And so Tiffany really dug deep into what that means, what customers are looking for. And she had some great stats. I was shocked when she said that 57% of customers have stopped buying from a company because a competitor provided a better experience. And that 51% of customers say that most companies fall short of their experience expectations. So I would love to see how companies start using tech and AI to really dig in to what is the customer looking for in their experience with their brand? What kind of interactions are they looking for? And we know speed is one of them. We know customer service is another. I still think personal customer service is what people are looking for, not a recorded line where if you want to go here, click 1. If you want to go here, click 2. I feel like that's just my opinion, but I think AI is really going to help curate a better customer experience with a company's brand.
Well, I think it goes beyond your opinion, because part of the presentation was this idea of having customer centricity, right? And is this that you have to focus on the customer as the place where all the growth is going to happen in your business. And another thing that I thought was really interesting, to your point, is she goes into this idea of fusion of people and technology, that you have to have an emphasis on blending human talent with technology for success. So I thought what was key there is this idea that as we continue to be on a trend and a path of exponential technological growth, right? Where what may have taken 40 years to innovate before might come down to 4 years, right? The growth is going to be exponential, but this idea that for consumers, the blending, right, of the human element is really not going to go away, and to ignore that part and give up on that, right, in exchange for the efficiencies and the promises of AI and of this, next layer of technological revolution that we're going through, would be detrimental to business growth. I also liked that there was one slide in which she was kind of breaking down what has been the pattern since really 1990, where she was saying that there was, in between 1990 and 2010, that the focus was on being reactive. The consumer wanted you to know them, right? And so there was a lot of listening, and there was you got to know me. Then there was an evolution over the last 10 years. And this is where I find, between 2010 and 2020, about being proactive. And this idea that you got to know what I want. And now is predictive, which is you got to add value and surprise me too. Give me something that I know I want, but I don't know how to articulate, right? Or that I need. And so I thought that was a great example. And I was thinking about this today because, we go to these conferences and obviously she's talking to a room full of people that are business owners, entrepreneurs, developers, brokers, investors, right? Everybody in that room runs a business or runs an investment arm of their business. And obviously we internalize this information for our own businesses where we want to provide that level of consumer experience. But, this is also the tools that we then take to share with our clients who also run their own businesses, which is what I love. I love the synergy of not only are we learning for ourselves, but we are able to provide a lot of this information to see how people are looking at it. The conversations that we've had over the last few years about the future of office work, to me, has been really interesting how there's been a lot of collaborative conversations with our clients in regards to that, where there's been a little more input. It's not only, hey, I'm looking for more space, but it's more like, what are you seeing out there in regards to how people are adjusting to, work? Are they going back to the office?
How are your employees feeling about your back to work plan? If you have one, or are they demanding more?
Right. Yeah. Or they want to hear from you because you have relationships with all these other companies. How is everybody else? What are best practices that you're seeing out there that are working? So I thought that was really good. And I think Tiffany did a great job in this presentation.
Agreed. And before we move on to the next one, my favorite quote from Tiffany was how clients feel when they engage with you is what matters most. Yeah. Which I think is interesting based on some previous episodes that we've done, such about how Instagram is so important and how so many companies now are having places that are Instagrammable or something that they're trying to connect with their customers and with the general public on. So I thought that was super. I really liked that quote.
I also, there was a shorthand and I'm looking for it, but I thought it was great that where she says, when you do your Monday morning meeting, and you and I love the rule of threes. So this is right up our alley, which is the idea that when you go into the meeting and you're looking about your business or you're thinking about your business, 3 things that you want to consider. What should you stop doing?
Right.
What should you start doing? And what should you do more of? And I thought that was great because it gets to the point of really what every conversation is. We can mask it under other terms, but it's like, look, we're running a business. What is it that we need to stop doing so that we don't, we stop diverting resources where there is no, growth.
No major impact.
What do we do new that we're not doing today? And what are the things that are working that we want to do more of? So I thought that was great. I really enjoy it. Yeah. We're gonna have to make that into a placard or something and have it in our office. Yeah. So we'll make that happen.
And then we had our dear friend Beth Ensor on the stage.
Oh my God, Beth! She was so awesome. I loved it.
She always brings incredible energy, and we've had her on an episode. We were lucky enough to interview her, and one of the things that really got me this time was she's like, "Look, attention is the new currency. You need to get everybody's attention, right? You need to get your customers' attention. You need to get." Your end user, if it's not, if your customer, let's say if you're a broker, if your customer is the landlord, you need to get the landlord's attention, but then you also need to get the attention of the tenants and potential tenants for that center. And, she says, okay, attention is the new currency, and there are basically 3 ways to get it: social media, events, and prospecting.
Yeah, I thought throughout the entire presentation, there was that conversation of it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Right.
I thought that was great. And really how everything was broken down into your social media, podcasting, then events, and then prospecting. But I really like this concept of we are our own media channel.
Right.
And she mentioned a few people that we follow as well, like Gary V, Gary Vaynerchuk, who really is driving this idea of how social media has afforded everyone an opportunity for attention to receive attention that would have been extremely expensive, in the past, right? To gain that level of, that opportunity for branding, that opportunity for education, that opportunity for connectivity. Yeah, I thought, again, Beth did a great job. And by the way, we're just delighted by her mentioning our our podcast. So that was really beautiful. Yeah. That was pretty cool.
My favorite quote from Beth was coordinate the uncoordinated. And so what that was is like, find out if there's something missing. If you feel like there's something missing in your community, in your office, right, with your customers, whatever, find out what that is and you coordinate it. So, she says there was nothing that was specifically for women investors in real estate. She creates the conference. She and Hugh said, there's nothing, we all love and work with the small mom and pops, but there's nothing to recognize them and give them recognition. So they came up with the Small Business Awards. She's like, I'd really love to have a book club on commercial real estate. She starts a book club. Like, I love that, you know, and she talks about that for events, and what a great way to get attention, be recognized, and to show your superpowers and share results than in creating an event that attracts people that previously had nowhere to go because that event didn't exist before. Yeah. So I love that, and her energy is
I also really enjoyed how she shared this stat, because people think that they're already late because they see 2 or 3 people being highlighted in, let's say, commercial real estate, right? And so I love this, and this was specific to LinkedIn. There are 500 million members in LinkedIn, 260 million monthly users, right? So just about half of those members are using, but only 3 million users are sharing content weekly. So that's only 1%. And her point was that you're not late at all. Right. We're early. The opportunity is there. And so I thought that was just tremendous. And of course, her story about how all of this connectivity led to her being involved with a mall owner in Cleveland, Ohio, and how she was able to basically apply everything that she knows about canvassing to a new market and really develop something great out of it. And I mean, if that's not a proof of concept, I don't know.
I was just thinking of those exact words, proof of concept. She proved, and the naysayers were like, of course, Beth, of course you can do it. And Davey, that area like the back of your hand. Of course it works for you there. And she showed that it can work anywhere if you do it, and the amount of people and how she does it. So if you're curious and you want to learn more about especially retail prospecting, but you can apply it across the board, Beth is a great follow, and she's very free with her information. And if you log into her page, she's got all sorts of great stats and info that she shares and tricks of the trade.
No, absolutely. I also enjoyed so this was a 2-day event. What I really liked the fact that they had these breakouts during lunch and breakfast, and I thought that was great. I don't know if there was anything that was of highlight to you, but I saw an incredible presentation. It was a breakfast breakout that had to do with industrial and specifically the logistics business. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually going to pull up the name of the presenter, but while I do, I'll tell you that I really enjoyed understanding from someone who has been a practitioner for many years working with big companies. I really enjoyed the understanding it from the perspective of the logistics company, right? And and the granular way in which he was breaking things down. So he was looking at a business from the cost of logistics, right? And they were looking at what on average is the 3 cost components. 50 to 80% is going to be transportation cost. Mm-hmm. Warehousing is going to be 30 to 50%, and then your inventory, which is cost of goods, is 10 to 30%. So there is quite an array there. And by the way, the presentation was by Robert Nahigian. Let me see. I'm sure that I'm mispronouncing it there, but it's Nahigian, and it was really about the supply chain. But I love the breakdown of. This was the nerd in me was super excited, right? Because there was a clear understanding, number one, about the cost of transportation in every modal of transportation, right? Air travel, by ship, and then, the trucking, understanding how the number of pallets, for example, and the height of the warehouse warehouse gives you X amount of square feet of usable space, when you're double stacking. But to have actual numbers and have that breaking down, I thought was great. And then there was some very specific case studies, right? That, for example, I'll give you an example that I thought was tremendous. A company has a warehouse space. They have outgrown their current space. And now they're looking for a larger space. They're looking without thinking about the cost of transportation, right? They're just looking at, well, somewhere close by where I could get those extra, 50, 100,000 square feet. They had choices that were available to them. The most inexpensive choice was a mile away, right? The choice that would have been more expensive would have been immediately adjacent to their current space. And so on a price per square foot was going to be higher. They chose the place that was a mile away. But because of the dynamics of the transportation patterns in that area, they were losing more money on transportation costs just by being a mile away than if they would have paid the extra money to be right next to where their current space is. And they never did.
They never did that study.
They never did that study.
Right. They were just looking at the price per square foot. And think about it. If you think about our area of like Doral and Medley, where we have a ton of warehouses, there's a big difference if you're smack dab in the middle of Medley versus if you're in Doral close to 95 and close to the turnpike, right? Yeah. So, and the amount of traffic and some of the stuff in Medley, there's, weird one-way roads that you have to cross bridges and there's strange traffic lights. So if you think about that, you're right. There is so much more goes into it than just the price per square foot. And I did attend one of those breakouts, and it ties in directly with your industrial. It was with Wes McCurry, who's the head of economic development for St. Lucie County, which we've spoken about before, and we've seen on our road trips the huge amount of logistics that's been built over there in the last 3 years. They have Glades Logistics Park, Commerce Park, Legacy Park. But to your point on transportation, the reason so many people are going up there and looking at that area seriously as hubs for distribution. I mean, Cheney Brothers has a huge space up there. Amazon, FedEx are just, 3 of the ones that I can name. But 70% of the state of Florida is within 3 hours from that Class A industrial space. Unbelievable. So, and it's in any direction you go, north, south, west, because east, if you drive 3 hours east, you'll end up in the middle of the Atlantic. But
exactly.
But that ties into your industrial. So after that, do you have more stuff?
I did want to say how granular this presentation was, where they were looking at the turns of trucks per day, per route, per delivery. This is how granular these companies get into. Like, ideally, you would want like a max of 1 to 2 turns total from the ship to the warehouse. So they're talking about when it arrives, right? So it could be 5 to 7 turns. And then you're looking at the guidelines of the transportation companies. Like UPS does not allow drivers to make left-hand turns. Did you know that? No, I didn't know that either, because 53% of accidents happen on left turns.
It makes sense, though.
So when they are laying out the track, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just nerding out.
I don't, no, I think that's
so
interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. So because that tells you. So if you're an industrial warehouse builder, imagine the insights you have on knowing that if you're gonna have UPS, if they're one of your or anybody like that, because my guess is if UPS has that and somebody else has seen the stat, they're all like, oh, brilliant, I don't want that left-hand turns either. So now if you're a builder, that tells you you want to be in a space with the least amount of right-hand turns to get to my property. Right? Because it's the number of turns and the type of turns. Because what if you have 5 right-hand turns, but only 2 left? They kind of,
Correct. And this was the stat, and I promise the last stat, but I think it's really important, which is that the majority of the products are coming into the LA port, right? When they come from Asia. But 61% of the U.S. population is east of the Mississippi.
Right.
So think about the cost of getting the products from one part of the country to the part of the country that is most populated.
Right, the farthest southwest
Yeah.
to, let's say, New York, the
Right.
farthest northeast, right? I
Correct.
mean, in terms of big metros, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying there's
No,
nothing
no.
northeast of New York,
Right.
you other little states.
For sure. All right, so that I thought was great. Again, I find that the quality really of the presentation.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. The amount of usable, implementable information was
doubt.
phenomenal.
And then it was great to have that Q&A panel with Bob Knackel. I thought, again, he was tremendous. What did you think?
Yeah, so Bob Knackel, and he was interviewed, the moderator for him was Michael Bull, who also, by the way, shout out to his commercial real estate show. He's a broker in Atlanta, Georgia, and the commercial real estate show is an awesome podcast. One of the things that I loved about Bob, well, he had two quotes that I thought were great. One was expertise. Your expertise has to be broad enough to make a living and narrow enough to really know your market and asset class. And my favorite one was you have to have passion for what you do. We talk about that a lot. We love what we do, but there might be aspects that you don't, but overall, you love what you do because the passion for what you do allows you to survive in the inevitable downturn or when those bad moments come up, even if it's not a downturn, if you're having to deal with the negative aspect of something, right? I loved that. And, he just has a ton of information. So that was good. And we skipped over Mark Toro.
That was great with his 5 C's.
Yeah.
No, Mark Toro and this, big development in the Atlanta area, right? And
outside of Atlanta.
Outside of Atlanta. I thought that was...
I think it's called Avalon.
Avalon, there you go. Yeah, I thought that was a great presentation on how that entire project came about and the work that continues to happen there and really what a curated feel. It feels very collaborative too.
Right. And his whole premise and everything that they do with Toro Development, what they keep in mind is that it's not about the space. It's about the place. And I loved when he said, what is your feeling when you walk out the front door? If you're not energized when you walk out the front door, it's a race to the bottom. And what they did is they took a empty space and they created a whole community that is energized. And it was interesting because a woman that I met later that afternoon said, oh my God, it was so crazy that he was there. I don't live in Avalon. I live about 30 minutes away. But when we have people come into town, we don't want to go into downtown Atlanta because of traffic, whatever. And we go and we spend the entire day there. We do our yoga and our gym classes. We have lunch. We get our mani-pedis. And then there's always something going on, either at the restaurants or music, and they engage the outdoor space. So they'll have art events and everything else. So we often talk about that, the importance of the neighborhood being the amenity.
Right. And
so I think you could tie this in because granted, not all spaces are like that, right? But you can tie this into one of Beth's things, which is another thing I love is how a lot of the dots connect as you listen to these. If you're in an area where you're not energized when you walk out the door, imagine the opportunity if you create the events and what's not there by coordinating the uncoordinated. Right. And a lot of developers have had success. If you look at Dakra in the design district and you look at Goldman with Wynwood, those were areas that did not have any energy when you walked out the door. And now look at them. They're some of our most vibrant neighborhoods.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
Those dead zones, when he says it's a race to the bottom, doesn't mean there's no hope. It means there's a ton of opportunity. So I really enjoyed his.
I also like this when he broke down the 5 C's of development and from his purview, and the first one was capital, but I like that quote about capital, right? Money that is invested in these projects. Capital has a lot of places to go, but no place to be, which is really, really great because, it makes sense. It's true. There's no need for people to make that investment investment. They have so many choices, right? There's no place to be until you make it a place to be. So I thought that was great. I also really enjoyed the presentation by Paco Underhill. I haven't read his book. I ordered it, of course, immediately because I thought it was great. But I really liked, number one, that you got a purview into the retail world, but not locally, not regionally, not nationwide, not only North America, but all around the world because of his vast experience and, really understanding the dynamics that are involved here. And I really appreciated the perspective of creating a female-friendly environment. And I was baffled by this, but this is about, I guess, the evolution of us as human beings as well, right? But it's how the majority of women do all the shopping and how little thought historically has been made to make the environment female friendly. Right. And so I thought that was really great. And some of the examples that he brought from South Korea, from Europe, from Canada, from South America, I think there was something in Brazil as well. I thought that was really, really great. The information there is endless, really. I think that there were a lot of little details. What was it? I think it was in the Korean place where they had the parking spots right in the front that were for women. That were for women.
And he started that part of the presentation by asking for a raise of hands. How many of you men have ever felt threatened in a parking garage and nobody raised their hand? Yeah. And then how many women, and how many women have felt unsafe in a parking area? Right. And so many hands went up, right?
No doubt.
And
how interesting! There were a lot of great stats. One of which, that after the age of 40, 80% of your purchases are the same.
Yeah.
You're already set in your mind. 80% of my purchases are going to be the same product, the same brand, the same type of thing. And
he said that was mostly out of habit, right? Because you have 40 years to have tested the generic versus the name versus the newcomer versus the old time product that you're familiar with, and you've had enough time to compare and contrast. And he said that getting the attention of that demographic on a new product has to be extremely creative.
Yeah. Exactly. That was really a great breakdown. And if you ever have an opportunity to listen to Paco Underhill or read his books, I highly recommend it because I think you'll get a lot out of it. And I think that anybody who wants to focus on retail as an asset class, that should be the first book they read, really, to understand that dynamic. I think it's really valuable.
He comes at it from a behavioral scientist's point of view, which I find really interesting. His two books are Why We Buy and Call of Them All. And one line stands out to me from Why We Buy that I'll never forget. And it's that women like to touch things before they buy. They want to feel, so if they go in, don't have everything wrapped up in plastic or whatever, because they're going to want to feel. They want to know the texture. They want to know if the quality feels as good as it looks, etc. And I remember that thinking, brilliant. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, no, there was just a lot to break down, and I know we'll put the link to those things, but there's just a lot of good stuff.
And he did say too, another stat, well, it wasn't really a stat, it was more of a fact, but he says that time is super poignant in the post-pandemic world because the number of households where a woman is the dominant breadwinner has increased significantly and is continuing to increase, whether it's a single family household or even if there's a partner. And he said, again, to your point of focusing a little bit more on creating things for the woman, is that even though in many situations the woman is the dominant breadwinner, she's still the main caregiver, the main cook, the main chauffeur for families with children. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we had Gunnar. Oh my gosh, this was a great panel with Gunnar Branson and Spencer Levy. And Spencer also has a great podcast, the Weekly Take podcast.
Yeah, and he's going to be at the Miami Realtors Commercial Conference coming up as well. So it'll be exciting to hear him after the rate cut and everything else. So it'll be really great.
Yeah, that was so funny. They were actually on stage as we're sitting there waiting for the rate cut. And during their presentation, everybody was looking at their phone. 50 basis points. And Spencer had said, my guess is 50. And Michael Hinton with CCIM had been doing an informal poll, just asking everybody as they walked in. And almost everybody was, 25 basis points, 25. There were a handful of 50s. And Spencer called it on stage for sure.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Spencer said he said too, he said, you aren't in the real estate business, you are in the labor business. That's because everything relates to jobs. Yeah. And if you think you're in the data center business, you're not in the data center business. You're in the water and energy business, because water and energy is the basis of everything to make a data center functional. So I thought that those points were really interesting. And we've talked about that before, perspective.
Yeah, the way that I wrote those notes is, you're not just in the commercial real estate business, but also in the demographic and labor business. And it's interesting because we do spend a lot of time discussing that when we bring up the reports from RPR and all those things. The demography is destiny. Mm-hmm. So it is important to understand those patterns and those dynamics, It even goes back to the conversation about the industrial, about that 61% of the U.S. population lives of the Mississippi. So, you start to look at, I thought that was tremendous.
Yeah, and Gunnar had to, he said, if people don't know what you do, the audience is going to fill in the blanks with mythology.
Right.
I thought that was great.
Say that again?
That if people don't know what you do, the audience will fill it in with mythology. So one of the things was like developer, right? They used the word developer. Like, don't say you're a developer because people think, developers are going to come in. They clear cut everything. They're destroyers, whatever. You're not a developer. You're a builder, right? Yeah. And another thing that he said, and since it's October and, our theme of October is fear, he said, we are addicted to fear. Problems are big, but they are surmountable. So I just want everybody to keep that in mind in the scary month of October, that we are addicted to fear.
Yeah. And then, of course, we had presentations, market updates from Lawrence Yun. And I think there was another economist that joined them on stage as well to break down. And that's always great when we go to these conferences. We get that updated information as to where the stats are. Yeah, labor is part of it. Demography is part of it. Lawrence is really great at just providing by the way, Lawrence Yun, chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, he always provides, his final slide is always like kind of a breakdown of, okay, this is the thing. So he spoke about upcoming rent growth should be calmer, future CPI should be calmer, and this idea that the Fed can cut interest rates 6 to 8 times, over the next couple of years. Yeah, that I thought was really interesting. And then, of course, it's the networking, the energy, and, last but not least,
Dan Marino, come on. I knew you were going to. Come on. I knew you weren't going to.
By the way, Johnny Noon, if you're hearing this, I'm still waiting for my picture with Dan Marino to be sent to me. So expect an email from me soon. But we got to hear Dan Marino speak about his career and his business, ventures post-career, and, about leadership. And I do have to say, I think, modesty aside, I think I would have done a better job interviewing Dan Marino, but, that's just me. Sorry, Kevin Sears. But,
it's just because you're a super fan and Kevin's...
Well, the thing is that Kevin is, he is a New England Patriots fan, right? That's the only
and blemish. that rivalry, you can't...
Listen, the only blemish in C5, I would say, is,
putting a Pats fan to interview Dan Marino.
Pats fan to interview Dan Marino when you're in Miami. I mean, come on, guys. You know, come on. I was right there. I was in the front row. I could have just gone up. I didn't need prep, you know.
My favorite quote that Dan had was, "You have to have the pressure on to perform."
Yeah.
And I loved that quote. If the pressure hadn't, the coach used to make him call his own plays and everything, because if the pressure was on him, he performed so much better.
I also have to say, and I want to tell this story because we are okay. There were some post Q&A. And somebody shows up, and Jessica is going to get a kick out of this. Someone shows up from the audience and tells Dan Marino that he worked with the Browns, with the Cleveland Browns, and he was on the sidelines for 30 years, and and he loved it. And I think he might have been a first down marker, guy, whatever that role is. A what?
The chain gang.
There you go. He was on the chain gang and all stuff. So he goes, I was there for 30 years. I always loved seeing you play. I was there when you bust your Achilles. And I'm like, what? Of course, Dan is like, well, thank you for that wonderful memory, So then I'm leaving, and our friend George Guerra with RESF, he tells me, dude, some of you commercial guys, you guys are weird. You guys are weird. You guys are weird. And I was like, yeah, that was, that didn't work out well. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, thank you great conference. I'm really happy that NAR, in combination with CCIM, has really invested in this. Again, this, I think, will only get better. They always listen. There's always improvements that have been made.
And the site tours. We didn't talk about the site tours because we didn't go because we knew both of the properties. Exactly. But the day before, they did 2 site tours of 2 properties here, and they go out and they do a deep dive into the property and everything.
And we also didn't go because it was extremely hot, and we already live here, so we know we could go anytime. We could wait for cooler weather if it ever arrives.
I know. We're in October, sweating like crazy. Exactly. So my fun fact, I know we threw a lot of stats out today, but my fun fact was from Tiffany Bova, and it gets into the whole way that I started this episode, which is how fast everything is going. 81% of customers expect even faster service.
Say that again.
81% of customers expect faster service. So, I mean, as brokers, we know that usually the first one to respond, we have our phones, we have social media, we have everything. People expect almost instant, forget waiting 24 hours to respond to an email. If you wait 24 minutes, you're probably too slow. So,
I know.
No anxiety.
That's why it's important to have systems in place.
And that's why I run, people. I need to keep up with all of your expectations.
Well, she only runs to keep up with her mind.
Oh, if only I could keep up with mine, I'd have to run really, really fast.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. As always, we really appreciate all of the feedback. We're doing a lot of cool things to grow the podcast, and we're really excited to show it to you soon. Thank you again, and say bye, Jennifer.
Bye, Jennifer.